My love affair of comics started in the 1970s. I'm a native New Yorker. I grew up in the Bronx, the neighborhoods of Soundview and then Co-op City. It was a really fun childhood. It was actually, my neighborhoods were very diverse. In Co-op City, you had Jews, Italians, Irish, Hispanics, black folks and Asians, and it was a really fun environment. Like my crew of friends and I we used to ride our bikes around, we used to get into trouble. We were responsible for property damage, even saw a dead body. It's almost like the movie Stand By Me, only with open fire hydrants and people of color. That's a different TED Talk. We used to watch TV shows all the time. Some of my favorites were the original Star Trek. I used to walk around my house going, and I cracked my parents up because I used to recite the opening, to boldly go, but I used to say to boldly go. And used to crack my dad up all the time. I never got why he was laughing, but eventually I did. I used to watch The $6 Million Man with Steve Austin, and I used to copy him. I love The Incredible Hulk. You won't like me when I'm angry. You won't. But Star Wars, when Star Wars came out, that blew me away. Like that opening shot of the big Star Destroyer chasing that little rebel ship, and I was just like, oh my God. The images on that just really made an impression upon me. I never forgot that to this day. And I probably, begged my parents to take me to see that film like 3 times in the theater, and back then that was a lot. Like my mom was like, really? You want to see this again? And I was like, I have to have all the merchandise. I need everything. I need the toys. I need the underoos. Somewhere George Lucas was like, yes. So I even had like the Star Wars lunchbox. And back then we used to carry the metal lunchboxes to school. Yeah. I doubt they can do that today with the metal detectors and all that stuff. But then I started sketching. I started drawing. And then one day I drew my Star Wars lunchbox. And I brought that drawing home, and my mom and my dad saw it, and they said, wow, this kid might have some talent here. So they enrolled me in a local community center painting course. So once a week, and this is in Co-op City, in the Bronx, once a week I used to paint with my teacher named Emilio. And so I learned how to create images in color. It was awesome. And so after I had a certain amount of paintings and a certain body of work, I used that to apply to the Fiorello H. LaGuardia High School of Music and Art. That's the Fame School, for those of you who don't know. Where the movie where the kids used to break into, I want to live forever, in the hallways, in the lunchroom. I mean, that really was true. We boring art majors would be sitting drawing, and people would just be like, and I'm like, damn, okay. But it was cool. It was great because it was such a diverse group of kids from all over the 5 boroughs of New York that were under this one roof, and it was an amazing creative environment to be in. You had art majors, vocal majors, dance majors, music majors, and drama majors. The really cool thing, though, is that the art and the dance majors shared the same floor, so every day I used to see pretty girls walking around in leotards. It was awesome. But that's a different TED Talk. This is the 1980s. This is the birth of MTV and the music video. You had the Michael Jackson videos, the Prince videos, even that Aha Take On Me that was all animated. We art students loved that. But then I started noticing something. I'm like, with the exception of Michael Jackson and Prince, most of the videos they all featured white artists. Even the people dancing in the backgrounds or whatever, they were all white people. And I was like, that's interesting. Then I started noticing the TV shows that I used to love. Most of them featured white folks. The films too. And if you saw people of color, we were usually like the jive-talking sidekick. We were like the threat, or we were struggling. And, listen, I remember the Jeffersons, so yeah, they moved on up. But at the same time, you had good times, and I'm a fan of good times, but I mean, between like Janet Jackson getting beaten or burned by the iron, or like the father dying off screen, I was like, geez, Mom, Dad, can we watch something a little more uplifting, like maybe MASH, or something like that? Like, like there were jokes in the Vietnam War, like they had jokes there. So while I was in school, I really started like developing my craft, and I really started drawing, and I really wanted to become a comic book artist. That was my thing. And I started to really say, okay, this is what I want to do for a living. I really want to tell stories. I want to tell images, because as a comic, growing up, my friends used to read comics, but I loved comics. Seeing the images of Superman and Superwomen leaping tall buildings in a single bound, that was awesome. And it really made me feel empowered. I used to run around my house do a whole lot of stuff because it really made me feel empowered. And those images, I remember those images. They just really blew me away. They made an impression upon me. And the difference between film and comic books is that with a comic book, I could hold that image in my hand, and I can look at that image whenever I wanted to. So I said, okay, you know what? I want to become a comic book artist, and I want to do this for real. And so I applied to the School of Visual Arts, which is also in Manhattan, and I got a scholarship to go there. I applied to Pratt and Parsons, but my parents were like, no, you got a scholarship to SVA, you're going there. And so I was determined to get work before I graduated college, because I didn't want to be like everybody else and be amongst the herd. So in my junior year, I went to the New York Comic Con, and back then, in the 90s, there was only one convention in town. That was the New York Comic Con. Both Marvel and DC are both based in New York City, and they would send their editors there to look for talent. And if you were an aspiring comic artist, you went there to get work. And I did, and fortunately, I did. I got my first paying work doing painted illustrations for Marvel Comics. Then I went on and I started working for Milestone, which is the first Black-owned comic book publisher. And then I went to DC Comics, and there I became the first Black artist to draw a regular Batman series, which is Detective Comics. Thank you. For those of you who don't know, DC Comics stands for Detective Comics. That's their flagship title. But it was really awesome. I'm this black kid from the Bronx. I'm working, on one of the most iconic brands in the world. I'm creating new characters. And I'm co-creating sections of Gotham City. And it really I started getting fans. I started noticing people started noticing my work and became fans of my work. And then I noticed that people actually liked my work, but they were also impressed by the fact that I was doing it. And for people of color, they're like, wow, we can do this. And for other people, they were like, wow, they can do this. And that really made me start to think about things. And, the interesting thing is, as an artist, we work in our little hovels, we work in our little caves. We tend to work in our studios or our apartment, and we don't get to venture out into the outside world, and we really don't see the effects of the work that we create until we go outside. It's really pretty scary. Sometimes we don't shave. Sometimes we don't bathe. Sometimes, I don't wear pants. This is for you. This is the love I have for you guys, dressing up here. But I noticed that when I would go to comic conventions, people would say, wow, you know what, hey, I'm an aspiring artist. How can I do this? Or I have kids. How can I foster their interest in this? And so that really inspired me to create a book that would encapsulate all of my experiences and hopefully sort of give people insights in terms of how I tell a story and how I craft an image. And that was pretty cool. And also the really cool thing is that it gave me the opportunity to create images that were outside of the comic book genre, more personal images, more diverse images. So after that, I went back to doing regular comic books. I illustrated Luke Cage. I illustrated Captain America. I illustrated Black Panther. And then today, I work alongside Robert Kirkman, the creator of The Walking Dead. Well, I don't draw The Walking Dead, but we work on a comic book that's about this international art thief named Conrad Paulson. And it's really cool, and this is a really great example of the power that I have in terms of representation. When we first started working on the book, Robert would send me notes about the characters because we had to create this universe from the ground up. And aside from the lead character and his family, who we just assumed were white, Robert really didn't give me any specific notes on the other people in the story. And so there is a female FBI agent who's trying to bring Conrad Paulson down, and so her name is Elizabeth Cohen. And so when I'm doing the design, I'm like, all right, let me draw her as a black woman. Sent it off. Robert saw it. He said, oh, Elizabeth Cohen's black now? Cool. Just like that, I use my power. And so going forward, that's my thing, is to diversify any story or any image that I'm hired to draw. That's it. But that's standard procedure for me now. I just do that. So if I can't change a major character, there'll be a black guy in the background Or a woman just like, oh, hey, how you doing? But what I really want to do is I really want to capture a moment in time with a static image. That's what I'm trying to do. And so whether or not it's, like an action scene or a car chase or, an argument between two people or a shootout or even a scene of a woman holding her child and showing love, that's my power. And so, because I believe that art inspires art, creativity feeds creativity. And everyone in this room has this power. So whether or not you are an artist and you draw some of the most iconic brands in the world, or you simply are just having an interaction with someone you just met, we all have the power. And it's the power of representation. Thank you.